Okay. Hi, everyone. I hope my audio and video is visible. So welcome to, today's uh, February online meetup. So, to give a short introduction about the meetup group. So Coimbatore FrontEnd group was, found a year back, and we've been doing sessions that is primarily focused on front end and design related topics. So we are focused on bringing at least we were focused on bringing the people, the professionals, the students in and around Coimbatore, to provide them a space where they can network and they can grow their skills and their opportunities around the front end and design scope. But as the pandemic hit, we got to expand to the global level through online meetups, and it has been great so far. uh, so it would be great, like going forward, if we are able to share uh, the community with our friends circle and everyone else, so that we can expand and grow along with everyone else too. uh, I would like to thank our sponsor Trustrace, so who has been sponsoring us from the beginning, with the space and the technical requirements that we needed for running the meetups. And I would also like to thank JetBrains, who has been sponsoring us with licenses that we can raffle to the participants of the meetup. So I would like to introduce Ameer, who will be talking to us about MicroFrontends today. So, Ameer, please, the stage is yours. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Saranam. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me today. And hello, everyone. Welcome today. So, really excited to talk today. So, let me share my screen quick. Saran, can you give me permission to share the screen?
Yes, Ameer, just 1 minute.
Sure. Okay.
Please, can you check now, Ameer?
Yep, yep. I think I'm able to share the screen now. So, you guys can see my screen, right?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay, cool. So, I did the screen go. I think it crashed. Yeah. Uh, So hello everyone. I'm Ameer. So in all the social medias, you can find me as Ameer the Hacker. So I work as ST2 at OLX People. So OLX People is kind of we are part of a OLX group, and we try to address the big problem that we have currently is that the hiring towards blue collar workers. Like if you take hiring for white collar workers, it is like very pretty straightforward. You have a lot of job portals by which white collar workers can apply. But if you take blue collar workers, it is not that straightforward, and you can't hire blue collar workers in scale. So OLX People tries to do that, and it hires blue collar workers in thousands for Amazon, Swiggy, and we try to optimize the algorithms behind job recommendations, application scoring, and auto screening of applications. So my primary responsibility over there is like building the front ends and back ends with complex logics. We have front ends that scale for like thousands and millions of Indian users who are looking for blue collar jobs. So that's what I do for my daily job. So on my free time, I maintain a React lazy load library. Some of you might hear about it. It's like help you to lazy load your React components images for performance. That's like around 4K star. And I also write some small tools here and there to help myself and other developers. So you can find that in my GitHub profile with the same handle Ameer the Hacker. And I write a lot at Free Code Camp, and I'm a huge Marvel fan. So one day we help, like if you guys can relate to that, we are already friends, I would say. So I'm a huge cat person. I have some, I have a cute cat here at my home, and I love a lot of stickers. Like if this was happening in an in-person meetup, you would see a lot of stickers in my laptop. But unfortunately, uh, so today I'll be talking primarily on micro-frontend. So like today's biggest takeaway would be like you would know what actually a micro-frontend is, because there has been a lot of buzz around micro-frontends going on. And today we'll be talking primarily on what the bus is actually, and should you actually, ride the hype train and go with microfinance today itself, or like, if you plan to go, what are the strategies that you can follow, and what are the trade-offs that each strategies have, and should you actually need microfinance in first place, or it's like, just fuck up your development workflow just for the sake of the hype train. So that's the whole talk today. Okay. And at any point in time, if you guys have any doubts, or if you if you find something is not matching, like feel free to put it on the chat. I will try to answer it as much as possible. And at the end of the talk also we'll have a Q&A session, so no worries with that. So the first question, as you all might have, like, what hell is micro frontend, right? Like you would have heard it a lot in Twitter and blog posts. Like everyone is talking about micro frontend today, right? And it's not a big puzzle. It's like it's very simple. Like it's nothing but, like, you build independent front end pieces. Right? Like say you build a separate app for a profile page. You build a separate app for your landing page, and then somehow you integrate them together into one coherent single piece. Right? Like when a user visits your website, they have no idea that the profile page and the landing page are two different apps. They don't care about that, right? And the users actually don't care what you have done under the hood, but they just want to see the site, right? So when you take, like, multiple pieces of a front end, break it up into their own apps, maybe if you make them into different pieces of front ends with different technology, then we can call it as a micro front end, right? Like if you take micro front end, like let's say a good use case might be like, let's say you have a landing page, you wanted to have a great score in Lighthouse, or you want to have great performance. Since it's a landing page, it's the first page that the user lands onto, and you want to have the fastest response. So you can decide, let me take this into my own app and write it in vanilla JavaScript. So there is no there it will be pretty fast, right? And you can put it in JavaScript, give it a separate app, and you can have the listing page where you have all the products. It is, products page are complex because you need to show a lot of information, lot of products, and that in that place you can use a framework or a library like Angular or React. That makes sense, right? And then you can make it into another app. Then you can integrate them together into a single app. So when the user comes up, it would be faster on the landing page, and when they go to the product listing page, it would be very interactive, and it's okay for them to download some more JavaScript when they go into product listing page, because it's a complicated page. So that's the whole idea behind microfrontend. So when do you need microfrontend? So this is the second question that you should ask yourself, right? So first, we already know what is microfrontend, but actually, do you need microfrontend? So the answer is, for 90% of you, no. Just for the sake that my talk is on microfrontend, I wouldn't tell every one of you to go today just to implement microfrontend, right? Microfrontend is like kind of a pattern. If it's done right, it would give you lot of benefits. But if you miss up a little here and there, it's not gonna help you. It's gonna just add another burden on your hand that you should maintain. Okay. So before taking a microfrontend, you should need to ask these fundamental questions, like, do you have multiple teams which are working on different aspect of your site, and they are having bottleneck because of each other, right? Let's say you have a team that's fully dedicated on landing page, or if you have a team which is fully dedicated on profile page. Like, should you put a constraint on each other on what they should use, how they should be managing each other? Then you think, like, I would say, like, you should start thinking about microfrontend. Okay. And let's say again, if you have multiple teams and they are working around the clock on multiple features on different pages, then it is gonna be a little bit of a bottleneck for them to come together, set up a release cycle, release everything together in a single day, right? But the faster the release cycle, the faster the feedback you would get from the user. So think about it. If you think like there are multiple teams working on multiple features, and there is a, scope for you to release very often by each team, and each team is stepping on other team's foot and not able to release, then you should think about microfrontend, right? And the third obvious case is that you have a requirement for different view libraries in different pages. Like this again boils down to the team, right? Like let's say you have a team who works on the landing page and they want to keep things very light and they want to work on just JavaScript. You have another team like who are very much well versed in React. They want to work in React, and your product, like you want to build a profile page. Then you can just tell them that okay, you start building the profile page. You can use React, and there is another page, but some of your team members are not well versed in React. They want to work on Vue.js, or they want to work on Svelte, or whatever they are kind of comfortable with. At that point in time, you can just tell them, okay, then you take this piece of the front end, you implement in Vue.js, then we would find a way by which you can glue together all of them and make it into a single front end. But all these cases are to be well thought through. Like you have just two teams, and those two teams are having just small landing page and a small profile page. It doesn't make sense for you to have a micro front end. But if you think that that team is going to grow into huge numbers and each of the features are going to be very huge in them, then you should start thinking in micro front end. Okay. So till now, do you guys have any doubts, or does it make sense, or let me I'm not sure where the chat is actually here. Yeah, but in here the chat. Okay, I can't see any questions right now. Okay, how can we combine multiple microphones for deployment? Yep, I'm about to cover that. There are there are many strategies in which you can take multiple micro front ends and make them into a single front end. We will be seeing that soon, Prabhu. Okay. Now let's move into the advantages of micro frontend. Okay, so what you get out of the box for micro frontend, right? Like obviously easier developer onboarding. So you guys might have already heard about microservices. Like it's kind of the same benefit that micro frontend also gives. Like since you have separated projects and it has different line of concern. Like if you bring in a new developer, he in a day or two he might be able to onboard quickly because the front end is small in itself, right? If the landing page is just written in JavaScript, he's gonna just read that code, not he's gonna read the profile code. So that's good. And obviously separation of concern, like you're gonna keep whatever you're working on, box towards it. Like the sometimes it happens that someone is working on a profile page and non-purposefully they just they do something with the landing page and the landing page breaks, right? You just put a hard boundary there and no one can make changes to the landing page if you separate it into its own front end, right? You just separate the concerns out so one don't affect that. And easier migration of tech upgrade. Like this is the biggest advantage I would say. Like there you can see nowadays in teams there's a huge front end and they struggle a lot to update React, just React. I'm not talking about any other library, just React. Like React, when React 17 comes up, they are very confused how we gonna do it. Like it's a huge code base. So if you just change one dependency, then they have to go to every single file and ensure that everything is up to date or in line with the migration guide, right? It's a very tough game. Like you can't sometimes if you take this React 17, it didn't have much breaking change, but it doesn't promise the same for 18. So in React 18 there might be a lot of breaking change and you can't break your head to convert everything in one go. But if you take micro frontends, you can do it in pieces. Like one team can decide, okay, I'm gonna upgrade to React 18 because I'm not having any current product features right now. I'm okay with doing some tech upgrade. They're free to do, and same for other teams, so they don't have to wait for another team to just do a tech upgrade or migrate so that they can also do. So it just separates out into multiple pieces and they can have their own cycle of tech upgrade or migration of libraries. Now That doesn't mean microfrontends are like all good. They don't have any disadvantage. Like everything is trade off in tech. Like if you take any pattern, if you take anything, there's always there's something that you're gonna get and something that you're gonna miss. So these are the things that microfrontends you're gonna struggle with, or the challenges that you would get out of microfrontends. First thing is obviously duplicate dependencies, right? Like if you, let's say you have two teams and one team is deciding to use, okay, let's use Maman.js because we are comfortable with that. And the second thing thinks, okay, I'm not gonna use day functions because it's new, it's shiny, and it's modern inside, so I'm gonna use day function. Another team is going to say, oh, no, fuck it, I'm not going to use any dependencies. I'm going to just use the normal JavaScript date constructor. That also works. So if you see in this, in three teams, we are having three different ways of doing things and three different libraries. One is native, one is a smaller dependency, one is a huge dependency. So this falls on the user. Now, when the user comes in and he's trying to navigate to the site, he's actually downloading two different JavaScript bundles for the same purpose. Obviously, he doesn't know that, but it's going to affect your website's performance and your user engagement, right? And maintaining common coding practices. Like when you separate out things into their own repos or into their own code bases, then you need to ensure that they all come together on in a single line. But let's say when it comes to multiple code bases on multiple tech stacks, then it's going to be even more difficult. Let's say the coding practices that they follow on Vue will be different when it compared to React. And to ensure that all those align to a common goal, to ensure that they are following a certain guideline, it's going to be that easy. Okay. And obviously the communication between microfrontends. Okay, you separated things into into their own front ends, but how do you ensure we communicate between them, right? Let's say you have a product page and you have a product details page. How the product page is going to tell the product details page what is the product that it should use to tell the details, right? And sometimes, let's say you have multiple front ends and you want to pass in some critical like information like your session, like for example the login page need to tell what is the session cookie for every other micro front end. So one of the tough problems in computer science itself is communication. How you communicate that and how you ensure that the communication never breaks, right? Like one typical example would be like your front end always communicates with your backend through API, right? And we try hard to ensure that the communication doesn't break. Sometimes the API contract breaks, the response to the API sends breaks. The backenders always do something that breaks the API, and the front end breaks. So we now internally have a communication contract between one microfrontend and another microfrontend. So like ensuring that that contract stays and one doesn't break the someone else's contract is going to be a little tough. Okay. And CSS pollution. Like microfrontend by default doesn't provide you any protection from CSS pollution. So if you are using some CSS and another team is also using the same CSS classes, you are gonna step on each other's toes, and at some point in time you're gonna kind of break one another's microfrontend, right? It's just a matter of time. And obviously client side routing. Okay, so like you have made your own landing page, you have made your own product page, but how do you make sure that you have seamless routing between these pieces of micro content? But right now, let's assume that you don't think about it. Then what happens is that every time when a person or a user navigates from one micro content to another micro content, he's gonna have a full page reload. So you are just blowing the entire idea of single page applications, or the native app feel that you get out of the box. Since you are using multiple view framework like Vue.js, React, they have their own routing libraries and their own routing strategy. So aligning them together and making sure that when you navigate from one micro front-end to another micro front-end, there is no full page reload. It's going to be a little challenge. Okay. So till now, do you guys have any other questions that you want to ask me, or can you proceed? Cool. I think there are no questions, but at any time, feel free to jot it on in the chat. Okay. Now let's see the patterns. So now you guys are clear with like what microfrontend is, what are the what are the boon and bans, what you get, what you don't get, when to do it. Let's see some of the patterns. Like let's say after all this, you decide let's go with microfrontend. Then you can break down the patterns or the paths that you can take into these ways. So I broadly bifurcate them into two strategies. One is the server-based strategy and it's a client-based strategy. Okay, so server-based strategy is gonna purely stand in the server, right? And in the client-based strategy, you are purely doing things in the client and you are not doing anything in the server. Okay, so the first strategy, server-based strategy, and at Widex people we try to do a micro front end for our internal products to ensure that the same benefit that we get from the that I talked about, like having multiple tables building on multiple features of the site. So the first strategy that we tried, and it's very cheap. Like you get this for free. You don't want to do anything. There is nothing you need to touch for your in the existing front end tooling, right? Today the thing with front end is that the front end tooling is too complex. Like you have webpack config maybe written few years ago by a huge webpack expert. You don't want to kind of hack it out and you're not comfortable working on it, then this is a good first strategy to start with. You just update your server configuration. So we used an nginx server. So if you use Apache, it's going to be a little different, but the code idea is that you just add two lines of code. You say that okay, whenever the user visits the root page, you just proxy whatever request comes in into an S3 bucket, which has the content of my landing page micro frontend. Okay, so you just build your micro front put it into a S3 bucket. Okay, it can be anything. You can just put it in local file or in local folder in the web server also, but doesn't matter. But here, what we try to do is that we just tell Nginx that whenever the user visits the landing page, proxy all the requests into S3 bucket, which is root. And if they come visit the jobs page, then proxy that into another S3 bucket called jobs and take the index.html from that. So now the user would just have no idea that they are using different micro frontends, but we do the trick in the server and serve different micro frontends. With this, the team can independently push their build to the S3 bucket, and our web server will take care of the rest. Right. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of the strategy. Okay, so the pros is that it's the easiest. You can start using front ends from day one. Nothing, you're not touching anything in your front end tooling because it's complex always, and there is no CSS solution because you are doing a full page reload, right? When you land on the landing page, you are having a full download of assets, and when you switch, you are actually again having a full download of assets. So there's no CSS solution in this. Okay, and without any worries, you can start using different view libraries or framework. For landing page, you can use vanilla JavaScript. For jobs page, we used or we can use Angular or React, right? And then again, it has some trade-off. The first trade-off is that obviously you need to have full page reload between micro frontend. And again, you have duplicate dependencies. So let's say we have a jobs page, we have a jobs details page, we have a candidates page. Everything is gonna download React and React DOM multiple times. You can argue that you can use service workers. Yep, you can. Like it's one way of getting around with the duplicate dependencies. Even in that case, let's say two teams use different version of React, then they are gonna obviously download it twice. But one way to get around it is that you put a service worker and you cache all your dependencies. But service workers are in them, it's a huge beast. It requires a lot of handling. But yeah, you can get over it with service workers. But the biggest disadvantage I see in the server configuration is that you can't use common components, right? Like let's say we have a landing page, it has a navbar, and we have the jobs page, which also has a navbar, which has also a footer, and there's another microphone which is obviously not going to have a navbar and a footer. So we are kind of replicating code across multiple micro frontends, across multiple technologies, and if we want to make change, it is not easy to make a change everywhere, right? You can argue that I can make it into a design system library, push into npm. Yep, you can do that, but still, if you let's say you cut a new version of your design system or your npm library, you need to have a lockdown release for all the micro frontends upgrading at the same time. So you are kind of implicitly creating a dependency that like whenever you upgrade a navbar, you ensure that all the micro frontends are updated before releasing. So this kind of goes against the philosophy of microfrontend. So the idea of microfrontend is to have less dependency as possible between teams, or less lockdown release between teams when compared to normal microfrontend, right? So that's the disadvantage of the server config. But if you feel that my neighbor and common components are not going to change that often, then this strategy would give you a lot of benefits, because you can reuse your components from npm package, and you just make just 2 or 3 lines of change in your web server, and you already have a microphone in your hand, right? So you guys have any doubts around this strategy? Cool then. So let's move on to the next strategy.
Sorry, Ameer.
Client. Yep.
Uh,
Sorry.
Dinesh here. So,
Yep. Yep.
just looking at this strategy that you just explained now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering, no, like it's hard for me to find this to be a micro front end. The reason is
Okay.
because it's like, the entire pages are being, as you said, we can use, npm packages to reuse.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but still, does this actually fit into the definition of micro front end?
Yep, yep. Without any, second thoughts, I would say it fits into micro frontend, because it's like, micro frontend doesn't, give you any guarantee about there would be, a client side routing or anything like that. Micro frontend is just a pattern in which, you split across all your micro frontend into their own project. That's the just, the key part of a micro frontend. Okay. If you have a front end that is separate into multiple projects, and they are, used by the user in a single website, then they can be called as micro frontends, right? Like, let's say, like the same definition for applies to microservices also, right? If you separate your services into multiple stuff, the way they talk to each other, the way you as other services access them doesn't affect if they are microservices or not, right? Just that they are separate, and they are they are having their own business model, or a business domain box is what defines them as a microservice. Same applies to microfrontend. So if you have separate projects which have their own business box or a business boundary, and they are accessed through a client whenever they needed based on their usage, makes them into a microfrontend. And in our case, we are aggregating all of them together under a single web server. So it still makes sense to call them as a microfrontend strategy. Okay,
Okay,
does that
got
answer
it.
your question, Dennis?
Yes, Amir. So the another thing is, uh, at least the top level of the route management will be on the server level.
Yep. The top level, in the sense, like, the micro frontend level separation would be on the web server, right? But
Yeah,
after your micro frontend has loaded, the client side routing would kick in. Like, let's say after you have landed onto the jobs page, if it's a React app, your client side routing would kick in, and you can use the navigation after that. Okay.
got it. So
So
anything after the jobs, I mean, like any sub navigation post the jobs can be handled by the React app. Got it.
exactly, exactly. So it's just 2-3 lines of server config in which you are defining just the boundaries of your micro frontends, but it doesn't restrict you from using client-side routing in your micro frontends.
Got it. Thanks, Amir.
Yep, that's
Okay.
what we were discussing on the first slide, right? Like, when you have micro frontends, having client-side routing inside each micro frontend is not going to be that challenging. But ensuring that, having client-side routing between the micro frontends, like, from the product page to, like, from the landing page to the jobs page, how can we ensure that the user doesn't have full page reload? It's actually kind of a challenging stuff. Okay, and it's actually not achievable to server config. We will look into the client config. Okay, cool. So I don't see any other questions. So let's move on to the next strategy. So this strategy is called a client-based strategy. Okay. So a client-based strategy, as it comes from the name itself, it's purely based on a client-based play. A server is not involved. Okay, so you just do a client-based play, and if you wish, you can make some changes to your server to to provide different bundles, or how to handle different microphones. You can do that, but this is majorly based on the client config. Okay, so this actually is like, the whatever picture you are seeing right now is kind of very common across all the client strategies. What you do, sir, you would have a common shell. Okay, A shell is nothing but the the central app which is going to house other micro frontends. Okay, the shell is going to hold all the common components. Okay, so for example, navbar, footer, everything is going to stay in the shell in one place. So you make changes in one place and it's going to be reflected in all other places. And so we have a central hub called the shell, and then it's the shell's responsibility to load other micro frontends. So the shell decides that, okay, you are right now in the landing page, so I'm going to pull the landing page front end and show it to you. Okay, now you are in the profile page. Now I'm going to pull the the profile micro front end and show you. So the shell is what is going to be the deciding authority to show you which micro front end to show. Okay, so in this, the first strategy that you can follow in the client-based strategy is the iframe strategy. Okay, so in the iframe strategy, what we do is that we do the same kind of the server config. We put the things into a server to tell them to which microfrontend load from which S3 bucket, and we have a common shell which would be loading the those pages, right? Based on, like, if you go into the landing page, then it would load the landing page into the iframe. If you are landing into the jobs page, you would load the jobs page into the iframe. Okay, so now if you see, we are kind of visually eliminating the full page reload, because all the page reloads are happening inside an iframe, right? Like during the, so we are also sharing the common components. So like outside the iframe, you would have the navbar component, you have the you have the footer component, and in the middle sits the iframe, and the iframe is controlled by the shell. So based on the client route or the route that the user landed on, the iframe loads the respective micro frontend from the server, right? In this case, you can see there is no full page reload itself, but there are some challenges, like inside iframes you can't share cookies, right? So you can't share cookies between two micro frontends. So you, after login, how do you, like, it's not that easy in the shell, it's easy to share the cookie from the shell to the into the iframe. So you can't also share a cookie from the iframe to the shell. So how do we do that? That's also a challenging thing. Okay, but let's see about the pros. The biggest pro is that there's no CSS exposure. Since each micro frontend load into their own iframe, right? There is no CSS exposure. And obviously you can use different views and libraries, and there is no full page loader, at least visually. So the user is not actually visually gonna get, it's not snappy. He's not gonna feel that way. So there's not gonna be a full page loader. It's gonna be inside the iframe, and you can reuse common components. There is no need for you to go for npm package and anything like that. You can have all the common components in your shell. Okay, but there are cons. The cons is that if you're doing this for a SEO based website, it's not going to be good, because iframes are very bad for SEO, and they are not very responsive. Iframes are very bad, or very kind of a boolean responsiveness. You don't respond, you can't build responsive views with them. And obviously, we still have not solved the problem of duplicate dependencies. There will be definitely always duplicate dependencies with that are downloaded across multiple microcontrollers within the iframe. Okay. So and any doubts, you know, guys, on this iframe strategy? Okay. Hopefully there are none. Okay. So now let's look into the next strategy. Dynamic asset loading. So this is kind of, kind of a superset of the previous strategy, and here we try to eliminate the iframe and the problem the iframe graph cause in this dynamic asset loading. So the whole idea of this particular strategy is that we dynamically mount and unmount the app ourselves rather than depending on an iframe. So it's nothing but when you go to the profile page, the shell is going to actually load all the assets, that is, like, by assets I mean the JavaScript, the CSS that is used by the app, into the shell itself. So we don't care about iframe. We don't make any server configuration change. You just give the shell the details on where your app lives and what are the asset a particular micro content actually. Okay, so let me give you a quick demo on that. Okay, so where am I? So I have kind of an app here which I call it a Zomato. It's kind of a Zomato clone. And I actually, if you see in the SRC folder, we have three other folders. The container folder is nothing but obviously the shell that I was talking about. So this is the shell, and we have two microfunctions here, restaurant and restaurant details. And both of them are just create React app. Are not done any complicated build setups here. It's just a create React app. You can see it's the same as create React app. Right, they are just create React app with some components, some with pages. Like, if you take the restaurant page, it's gonna have uh, uh, some restaurant pages, like, a list of restaurants. And if you take restaurant details, it's gonna have a restaurant detail page. That's it. And let's see, quickly have a look at container. The container is just having an index app, and it's gonna load the restaurant and restaurant details microfrontend. So let me just like, before I start explaining into the code base, let me just start the microfrontend and show you guys a demo how it actually looks before we dig deep. So I have started the container React create React app, and I'm starting the restaurant app in port 3001. So this is running in port 3000. This is running in port 3001, and I'm gonna start the restaurant detail page, and it's gonna be running in port 3002. Okay, so I have an issue here. What's the problem? Give me just a minute, guys. Okay, I think I used previously I used Jhan. Now I've used NPM. So that's the problem of not using a thing after for a long time. Just give me a second. So like if you guys want to explore this code base after this talk, uh, this is the link to that. Okay. So the container is starting in 3000 port. wait for the MicroFrontends to finish the build. Okay. So we kind of now have all the MicroFrontends running. So now let me reload the page. So this is the home page, and it's kind of loading all the list of restaurants from the Zomato API. And if I click on it, it's gonna show like the like the reviews about the restaurant. Actually, this restaurant, this whole thing is another micro frontend, like the restaurant app that we saw. And when I click on it, it goes to the restaurant details page. And if you can see, we have no page reload, and we're not using any iframe also. I can prove you that by showing you that there is no iframe involved over here. We are just loading everything uh, inside main tag in the micro frontend of restaurant, right? So there's no iframe here, and there is no full page reload, and we are loading the each create React app based on the path that you're they're navigating, and it's using client-side routing. There is no server configuration that I have to do, right? Now let me quickly show you how we are trying to do that. Okay, so these restaurant data and restaurants are not anything special, right? Like they're just another create React app. The most of the magic happens in the container. So in the container, like there's an option in create React app, in which by which you can proxy some of the API requests to another to another host, right? Like just Google about proxy in create React app, right? In that you can specify some routes and some proxies for that. So what I'm trying to specify here is that I'm specifying a proxy for the route slash restaurant. So when I'm hitting the slash restaurant, it is going to proxy to the port 3001. If you remember, 3001 is the port where kind of our micro frontend for restaurant was running. And for restaurant details, I am proxying it to port 3002 of localhost. That's where our restaurant details create React app was running. Okay, we are just proxying it. Okay, why we are proxying it and what we are achieving out of this, I will show you. Okay, so the next thing I am going to show you is a component called micro frontend component. So this is the component that is actually going to load each micro frontend. Okay, what this component does. So to this component, I am giving two props. One is a name and a host. Okay, so the first, based on a name, it is going to create a method called render and the name. Okay, so we are just creating a kind of a name from a function name from that, and then I am creating a function called mount microfrontend. Okay, what it does. So, and I'm whenever I'm like loading this component for the first time, the I mean the microfrontend component, I am gonna use the use effect to call my mount microfrontend. Okay, I'm gonna call that method. Okay, so what I do in this method, it's very simple. First of all, what I'm trying to do is that I am hitting a fetch request to the host slash asset manifest. Okay, and before that, I'm checking if I have a property on the window object with the function name that I created using the name that was provided as a prop to the component, right? Like how does this function come into picture? We will see it later. But what I'm trying to do is that I'm making a get request to the host slash asset manifest. So if you guys are aware of Webpack, so whenever Webpack builds stuff, it provides a manifest file in the root. So, just a minute, I think I misspelled it. It's not that easy. So if I go to 3001 and do asset manifest.json, you would get a JSON file which actually tells you what are the assets that Webpack built. So these are effectively all the assets that your microfrontend actually needs to run. Okay, so making that get request, I get the JSON manifest from it, and then I take all the entry points. Entry points are nothing but the JavaScript that you need to mount in your page to run this app, right? So I take that and I create a script tag out of it, and I attach it to the document body. Right? So whenever you attach a script tag into the document body, the browser is going to automatically run it. Okay. Once it has been mounted and once all the script tags are ready, right? What I do is that I call this method that we actually, the method name that we got by concatenating the name with render, right? I'm just calling that method, okay, with the name of the micro frontend. Okay. Now let's see what this method actually is. Like if you come into our micro frontend in the index.js, whenever the process is development, what I'm trying to do is that I'm defining a common method, kind of a global method on the window object based on the the property name is got from this. Like it is just nothing but render the micro frontend name. Okay. And what this function is going to do, it's just going to take the a container and render the React app inside it. So in each micro frontend or the individual micro frontend, what you're trying to do is that you're defining a global method on the window object, and that function, what it does is that just takes your micro frontend and mounts on a particular element in the DOM. Okay. So you provide this kind of a contract, and this contract is exploited by the container app. So what it does is that it just makes a request to the manifest.json and gets all the assets for a particular micro frontend, and then takes all the JavaScript assets of that particular micro frontend, loads that into the DOM. And once that is done, the global method that this particular micro frontend exposed, this particular method is available to that shell. So the shell knows that, okay, every micro frontend has this contract. I'm just going to call this global method. By calling that global method, the microfrontend actually mounts itself into the shell. That's what actually happening here. So when I click on go to the restaurants page, I can actually show you guys the console page. Let me just dock it here and show you guys the network page. Okay, so if I reload, uh, you guys can see I will be actually making a asset manifest request to the localhost 3001. Okay, actually the this is proxy to localhost 3001 because I'm making it inside the restaurants part, and now I got the assets of all the restaurants micro frontend, and then I loaded that into the body tag. I can actually show you guys that also. So if you see, this is the MF micro frontend that was mounted, and then in the script tag you can see that I just mounted all the scripts that was taken from the micro frontend one, and then I give some unique IDs for them. Right now, if I actually go into another micro frontend, you can see I dynamically loaded 3 script tags for the asset of that micro frontend. And then if I show you guys in the window object, I can show you there is a 2 global methods, render mf restaurant details, mf render restaurant. So these are the 2 global methods that was provided by the micro frontend, and it was used by the shell to mount those micro frontend into a common a common element, right? So the shell depends when to mount and when to unmount. Okay. So if you see in the micro frontend, right? In the micro frontend, there is a way by which you can unmount also. You can just call the unmount method of the React, or you can just mount another micro frontend on the same element that would effectively remove it. Right. So this is the the asset manifest strategy, or the dynamic content loading strategy, in which you decide when an app should be loaded and unloaded. Okay. So let's quickly look into the pros and cons of it. It's very good for SEO, unless you're doing some data loading and stuff like that. In that case, you need to go with SSR. But comparatively to the iframe strategy, this is good for SEO, and there is no full page reload, obviously, right? You're not loading a full-blown page. You're just using client-side routing everywhere, even when you're switching from one microphone to another. And you obviously reuse a lot of common components. You reuse navbar, footer, like the shell had everything, right? As you can see. And some of the common dependencies like React can be kept in the shell. Like you can use the external property of Webpack to tell them that, okay, you don't want to, like when I build for production for this particular micro frontend, don't bundle React with it. I would use the React from where I'm running. So whenever that your micro frontend is going to run your browser, It's going to use the React that got bundled with your shell app. Okay, and there are some cons obviously. So the first con is the CSS pollution. Since you're using the same client for migrating, navigating between one microfrontend to another microfrontend, there's going to be CSS pollution. One way that you can go around is that by strongly adding some linting rules by which no one can use global CSS. They can only use CSS and JS, like CSS modules or style components, and totally restricting anyone from using any CSS files. That would put an end to that, but it's little complicated to set up, and everyone is not well educated with CSS and JS. But that's a trade-off you need to take. That you say that, okay, if I'm gonna go with the dynamic asset strategy, I'm gonna not allow anyone to use normal CSS. They should use CSS and JS. And the using different views and libraries is going to be tricky. I just showed you the apps. All the apps were Create React apps, but if you bring in a Vue app, plugging them into a Create React app, plugging them into your existing Webpack config so that they share some common dependencies at the same time, having this same seamless client routing is going to be not that easy. Okay, so if you at some point in time you decide that, okay, I'm going to create the React on the shell, then you are effectively again locking and going against some of the philosophies of microfrontend. So at any point in time you want to update React, then you need to update the shell, and before releasing that, you need to ask all the teams of other microfrontends to test their microfrontends with this particular new version of React, right? So that's a very tricky part in this dynamic asset loading. So you guys have any questions around this? I can take that before we move on to the next strategy. Yep. Can we use this approach while deploying in the following way, like yarn build or put microcontroller serving the index.html to the container? Yep, exactly. So that's what actually happens. When this is for development workflow, when you actually build it for production, we don't use any proxy servers, right? So what we do is that we just place them into different buckets, right? So let's say when I want to deploy this to production, what I do is that I build my container, I place the container in the root, and then I build the restaurant app, put them into another bucket called /restaurant, and for restaurant detail, I put it in another container, another bucket called restaurant details, right? So now I can directly make a GET request to /restaurant/assets.json, and it's going to be a static asset, and it's going to be written from my S3 bucket, right? So when it comes to production deployment, you don't even need a server. You just make it, deploy it to Netlify, and it would still work, right? You just need to put your microfrontends into their own folders, like /restaurants and restaurant details. So when you make a normal GET request, you would get that response for the asset manifest directly, right? So any other questions that you guys have? Does that answer your question, Sudarshan? Yeah, cool. So we are a little short on time. I'm gonna little rush the last strategy. Uh, yeah. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave it in chat and look into it. And the last strategy, kind of a new thing to the pack, is the module federation. So module federation is kind of reinventing the microfrontend itself. Okay. Okay. So it's kind of reinventing the microfrontend itself. So Webpack module federation is a way by which you can build different microfrontends and take those build artifacts, give it to another Webpack config, and tell them build them together as a single front end. So Webpack does that for you. So whatever the dynamic asset loading that strategy we do, it's kind of baked into Webpack itself. Before it was not there. So in Webpack 4, we struggled to do that. That's why we had some hacky solutions like the dynamic asset loading. But with Webpack 5, it is kind of built into the Webpack itself. So you can do the same thing in Webpack 5. Okay. So the pros of is that the common dependencies are taken care of by Webpack. So if Webpack sees that two build assets having the same dependency, then it would just bundle the dependency only once. And using different view libraries is going to be less tricky because Webpack is going to bundle them. So Webpack knows how to handle those artifacts, and end of the day, those are just JavaScript that are embedded into bundles. So it's going to be less tricky for us, and it's going to be the Webpack that's going to do the hard lifting and not us. Right? Cons, obviously, there's again going to be CSS solution, but if you see frameworks like Next.js, they help us to avoid global CSS, and they push towards just having CSS and JS, like CSS modules and other stuff. So we need to go with that. And obviously, the biggest drawback I see is like you're gonna be getting vendor locked to Webpack. No one knows that, will Webpack be a legacy in future, because there are a lot of modern front-end tooling coming up to nowadays, like Beat, Snowpack, and things like that. And should we get vendor locked to Webpack, because Webpack is not so performant nowadays for huge front end. So you need to think about that. Are you ready to get vendor locked into Webpack? Right. I can give you guys a quick demo on that. Hopefully we have a minute remaining. So this is an example I took from a very good blog. So it's kind of um, explaining how Webpack Model Federation works in Next.js app. So if you guys heard about Next.js, Next.js is nothing but a framework for server-side rendering of React. So it's kind of he's using a Webpack plugin called Model Federation. So in that, what you can do is that for each of your micro frontend, you can have a Webpack config. In that Webpack config, you can tell that like what are the things that you export from the app itself. Like for example, in this case, he is telling that I'm going to export my navbar, my other components, and then what you can do is that you can use it in another app. Right, that's the whole idea of module federation. So you export something from your bundle. After it is built, you can start importing it in another app, right? So that's how it works. Like you export something from app one, you can start using it in the app two itself, right? That's how the whole idea of microphone works. Now, if you can see, I'm actually importing from the app one the name, and I'm using the dynamic import statement, so it is gonna be lazy loaded. And I just tell my Webpack config in the Next.js now that where I'm fetching that bundle from. So I just told Webpack that okay, after this app one is built, you would say see all the artifacts of app one in this particular path, which is right over here. Fetch it, and it is actually exposing, the navbar and the add component. I would just import that. So Webpack did the heavy lifting of shaking of all the common dependencies between app one and app two. It took care of bundling your app one and app two, dynamically loading the app one content from a particular build folder. So if you see, it's nothing but you are actually using the build artifact of one Webpack in another Webpack configuration. So that's the whole idea of the module federation of Webpack, right? So the pros is that there's no common dependencies between your microcontents. You're not locking them into it, and Webpack is taken care of it. And let's say one team decides to go with React 16, and another team decides to go to React 17, and Webpack is intelligent enough, and it says that okay, there is no common dependency. I have to bundle React twice. I will have React 16 and React 17. That's kind of fine for some scenarios when you want to just do some tech upgrade, and at some point in time when the other team also migrates to React 17, you would have a single common bundle. So it's just when there is a common dependency, it shakes it off into a single bundle. If it is not, if they are not common, then it takes the two version of it and keeps it so that both the microcontents work. And using different languages is not going to be that tricky as much. Okay. So that's it from my side, guys. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I will answer them. Um, feel free to unmute also if you have anything to ask. So it means actually mine was too complicated to understand. Or is it like you understood everything? So there's no questions at all. Then okay, so Sarunan, over to you.
So, Ameer, thank you. This is Dinesh. So, we're
Hi.
just using Saravanan's account for hosting the thing. So, it's sponsored by Trust I said, right? So, all the
Okay.
infrastructure that we use for the meetup is sponsored by Trust. So, thank you,
Okay.
Ameer. That was a really great talk, on micro frontends. And personally, I have been going through this topic for a couple of months to implement this in our organization as well. So
Okay.
this has been really insightful, really useful, and I'm pretty sure I will get to you at some point to learn more about micro frontends. And
Sure.
you can find Ameer by his handle Ameer the Hacker. So if you just Google his handle, you will be able to find him on most of the development platforms and communities that are available. So you can follow him on GitHub. He's really active on GitHub, and he's also maintaining a Kubernetes based package known as Cube Live. Am I correct, Amir?
Yep, yep, you're right.
Yes. So if you're into Kubernetes, Amir is the person you want to stay in touch with. So yeah, sure. You can also find Ameer on LinkedIn as well. So you can follow him on GitHub, LinkedIn for updates, and also to connect with him on any clarifications or anything else you want to collaborate with him further. Thank you so much. And I would also like to talk about the recent post on Telegram that we had regarding the workshop that we are to be hosting very soon. So we are still looking into the topic that will be for the workshop, but we are running a small event, so in order to give tickets for the workshop, right? So please do check out Telegram. If you're still not available on Telegram, we will be sharing the Telegram link over here, so you can join us on Telegram, and to stay in touch with the community as well. So that is all. Thank you so much. I would like to once again, thank Trustrace for helping make Coimbatore FrontEnd Group possible by providing us or sponsoring us with, the requirements that we need to uh, conduct the meetups. And Trustrace is a traceability-based platform that strives to bring sustainability in products that are being created by brands, right? So you can check out Trustrace at trustrace.com. So there are also a lot of openings in Trustrace. So if you are interested, you can check out the current vacancies available in Trustrace, and you can also apply for a vacancy. And I would also like to thank JetBrains for sponsoring us with free license to raffle. So we would be running the raffle for the participants of the meetup, and we will get in touch with you most probably on Telegram or LinkedIn. I mean, sorry, Telegram or Meetup, right? So I hope if you're not available, just to please drop us a message on Telegram or even LinkedIn would be fine. It would be easy to find one of the organizers on LinkedIn as well. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Have a good day. Bye bye.